Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Hey, happy Friday.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Not sure if we're sharing the right screen. Oh, it looks like it's fixed.
I don't think so. Yeah, I thought
I
I could see
think
something.
it's fixed now.
Okay.
All right. There we go. And let's move on to issue one. Issue one, Bitcoin falls after Treasury Secretary rules out buying it for strategic reserve. The Treasury Secretary of the U.S. said the United States is not going to be buying crypto for its Bitcoin and strategic reserve. As predicted on this show here, they'd have to pass that through Congress to get it. That would be very hard. Previously, they've talked about taking the money from victims and using the victims' money to make up their reserve. However, it seems they're finally giving up, publicly anyway. Dan Eve, what do you think about the Bitcoin reserve in the United States as that they will now not be buying any Bitcoin?
Yeah, it kind of was hinted at that a while back, wasn't it? That they were only going to confiscate.
You're muted, though.
Oh, hello. Is that better? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Now it's working, I guess.
Oh, no, it's working. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so they kind of hinted at that a while back that they're only going to confiscate it, and that's really sad. So to confirm that's pretty bad. And as we've discussed before, the confiscations, they come with their own complications, right? Because they can confiscate Bitcoin and hold it for purposes where it's been hacked, for example, but ultimately those funds need to be going back to the people that lost them. So, for example, the Bitfinex scandal, where lots of people lost their Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin that's being held is possibly going to be going back to those guys. So even the Bitcoin that's currently being held in the Treasury isn't all for the coffers of the US. But it's a sad day because obviously we just hit an all-time high and then had that bit of earth-shattering news that brought us down to 117,000 again. It still sounds crazy, but yeah, it's pretty bad news. We thought we were going to get a Bitcoin strategic fund. They were going to be buying the 1 million Bitcoin, and maybe Cynthia Lewis is still going to be working towards that. I think she tweeted something about it, but at the moment, it's not looking good for the buying up of the strategic fund. Although he did say, didn't Bessent say that they're going to be looking at acquiring it in other ways that are balance neutral or something. So whether they've got some other tricks up their sleeves to get some Bitcoin, maybe they're going to hack it from North Korea. I don't know. Oh, hello.
It seems my microphone works every 1 to 2 minutes. It's a very exciting error that we have going today. But yes, they say they're not going to be buying. As we've said on the show, they may as well have a national Picasso reserve. Every time they swoop up a Picasso from a drug dealer or a gang member, they should keep that Picasso an extra 10 years because it's going to be worth so much more money. And then they should never sell it. We've been through this before on the Bitcoin. It never made any sense. It never seemed like they were going to get it past Congress. And now they've already given up hardly into the first term of the second term of the Trump administration. The new Congress coming in soon, and they're not even going to try to get this through. Cryptocurrency fell on this. Let's move on to the next issue, see if the microphone will keep working. Moving on to issue two, like Dan said, the price of Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin is $117,250. That's down 0.78% or $920, with a high of $119,360, a low of $116,990. Over at Yahoo Finance, they say Bitcoin going to $200,000. Here's what will drive the rally to another record price. They also say over at CNBC, Bitcoin touches record. Ether almost makes new high before rolling over. Bitcoin price rose as high as 124,496 on Wednesday, while Ether was close to its 2021 record of 4,866. Dan, Eve, we've talked about the price. The price looked very good there. Like you say, it's a little down now, perhaps because of this reserve being rejected, but We saw all the buying, David Bailey's Nakamogo's project, whatever it is. They spent $1 billion allegedly just market buying, just pushing the button. I don't know how they actually bought it, but they say they went all in on the Bitcoin. We've seen all the buying as well from the institutions. Everyone was laughing, making fun of the institutions that were converting into Ethereum or considering that as an option now. Ethereum is soaring, as well as the rest of the altcoins, and it's starting to trickle into NFTs with Curio cards, CryptoPunks, even Mooncats and others seeing price rises and floor prices starting to take off. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the price of Bitcoin?
Well, 200K does seem like a nice little price. Arthur Hayes is still predicting 250K by the end of the year. But I saw, I think Adam Back's tweet was saying that that the cycle seems like it's going to be a lot longer this time, and kind of this time is different. I think it was saying, if I recall, it was like the peak is going to be around Bitcoin 2028. So we're going to see a kind of more of a slow, like multi-peak, and maybe that's because of the ETFs, the institutional buying. That's the institutions are coming now. They're here. We've got the 401ks that have been opened up, so people can invest using their 401ks. In the UK, we're still trailing behind, of course, and everything is awkward and jagged when it comes to just buying with Bitcoin. If you're buying a house, it's extremely awkward. There's only a handful of solicitors that will actually validate buying a house with Bitcoin. So you need to prove the funds, and a lot of solicitors won't actually touch people with. So there's lots of general things where in the UK where we're completely behind, and it's really good to see the US pushing forward with the Genius Act and their own, they're pushing stable coins, because ultimately stable coins give people a way into Bitcoin. As much as people may hate them, they become a gateway to Bitcoin, because once you start learning how to use stable coins, then you start learning how to use Bitcoin, and then you start learning how to use Bitcoin, and then you start realizing why Bitcoin is good. So think of stable coins as the latest gateway drug into the Bitcoin space.
I do love the idea of all these people investing into stablecoins and then being disappointed because they don't get any gains. The price just stays the same. I keep buying. Everyone I know is buying, and the price is still the same. It's been interesting watching the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum and other things go up, as we've been predicting here. It's been looking good for a long time, so we're not surprised. And even this little thing at the top here with the supposed end of the strategic reserve just seems like another temporary pullback. It doesn't seem that bad. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got lots more videos that you can watch, including short videos at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3, as Dan had said, they're having trouble in the United Kingdom, trouble with cryptocurrency. We want to play just a little bit of this rather long ad by Coinbase. We might break it into parts. Here's an advertisement by Coinbase that has been so-called banned in the United Kingdom and not allowed to be played on television.
We ain't got no troubles, no reason to complain. 'Cause here in great old Britain, we just love it when it rains.
Morning.
We're cozy here at home, even though it's not our own. But wait a few more years and who can say? Everything is just fine. Everything is grand. Your life can get no better when you're living by the letter in this pleasant land. Everything is just fine. Everything is great. The streets can't get no cleaner, nor the rat meat any leaner. No, life is just first rate.
Everything is just fine.
These fish fingers are a steal.
Price is up a smidge.
Just 100 quid a meal.
Empty purse, but hey, could be worse if there was nothing in the fridge.
Strategic realignment means I get to work for myself. Yeah!
Paying off my law degree with tips from each delivery. Excuse me, sir, I have your Tandoori.
dumb shit.
We're timing our belts with a stiff upper lip, 'cause everything's just fine.
Truly an incredible piece of satire there by Coinbase. Dan Eve, I mean, we've got there's the rats in the streets. There's the trouble with the job. The fish fingers price is going up. Pretty soon it's a full-on musical. There's spinning in the streets. There's a thing of poo coming up from the sewer. What do you think there, Dan? Is that what's happening in the United Kingdom?
It's literally it's exactly what's happening. It's the everything is fine dogs scene, but with England in a kind of Mary Poppins style. I really liked it. I think it's pretty cool. A lot of the criticisms I've seen have come from saying it doesn't pose any solutions. It kind of shows that everything's going crazy, maybe making fun of our free speech that we have in the UK, and the fact that we've got those. It doesn't kind of explicitly say anything about it, but those crazy age verification things where they're starting to censor it, all sorts of YouTube stuff, and even Wikipedia now. They're even like, you can get age checked on Wikipedia, which seems all a bit odd. So it kind of does paint the dystopian future that we may be heading towards, but it doesn't give us any solutions of how to escape it. And I think the reason why the ad regulator sort of banned it was actually because it doesn't warn of the risks of cryptocurrency. So it's kind of one of those, like, in the US, you got the medical ads where they've got the may cause heart attacks and all those like warnings at the bottom. They kind of needed one of those, but for losing as well as gains. But they didn't present any gains in there. Like, they didn't see like the poo not coming out of the sewer or something, the ceiling getting fixed. There was nothing like that in the advert. So I thought it was really funny. I don't think anyone could really take offense from it unless they're really touchy. I want to see solutions.
Entirely direct and entirely negative, and I could see how the British wouldn't want that on their television. It kind of seems like riot bait. Like,
we thrive on negativity.
Piss people off. Like, I mean, just kind of, you should be out there in the streets. Like, your life is terrible. This is a commercial. Going through some of the comments here from the chat, Starship Schrodinger's Destiny said he saw the ad, but thought it was too long. Maybe it was just designed to be banned. I think that's true. I think they could also cut in. They could do little short versions of this ad with like just the fish finger lady or just the dancing people. There's potential to cut that down. Let's see. They say a skeptic says it looks like a Monty Python sketch. Starship thinks it might be inspired by Every Sperm. Every Sperm is Sacred from Monty Python and the Meaning of Life. Let's see. There's trouble with the Brits bailing. They need new jobs. And vote socialism. It could be an ad for the new party. So a lot going there. Excuse me. We also had a story from the UK. Former UK Chancellor and current Coinbase advisor George Osborne says the UK is falling behind in the cryptocurrency market, particularly when it comes to stablecoins. Ha 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 ha. But Dan, what do you think? Are they falling behind in the UK? I know they had for us, a controversial decision. They decided to get rid of the Bitcoin ATMs, personal to some of our friends who had for a long time been running one and, of course, can't run it anymore. That seems kind of backwards to me, but are they also stopping people from getting into the all-important stable coins?
Well, there's obviously, we still got Coinbase is still a service that runs in crypto.com and all the kind of large services. But ultimately, Britain used to kind of be known as a bit of a financial capital, and it's really fallen behind. It's really lagging. And I think the pound still despite it being kind of pretty small in the grand scale of things, it's still the fourth most traded currency. So it would kind of make sense to maybe have a pound. I don't know, maybe try and take advantage and have a pound base stable coin. Again, as a gateway drug into Bitcoin. But it does seem like we're just falling behind the UK. We're creating all of these laws that are choking businesses rather than letting them open up. And yeah, I think I can see where they're coming from, because I've had multiple conversations and it's anecdotal, but pretty much most of the people I know that are in crypto in the UK are like, oh, I'm kind of thinking of leaving the UK. It's not looking bright as a future. But then even as in Europe, they're starting to stifle creativity when it comes to cryptocurrencies and general fiat as well. Like there's all sorts of rules potentially coming in about limiting and monitoring payments that are over a certain amount of either euros or pounds. So there's always these whispers of really crazy schemes to spy in on your funds. And I think the International Bank of International Settlements even have had an article today about giving a point system for Bitcoin, so that every Satoshi is labeled, and then all of the specific Satoshis, you'll have a point system to see whether it's been tainted or not. And again, it begs the question of how long is something tainted for? If you receive funds that are tainted but you didn't know, but it's for a legitimate sale and they're tainted because they were used in a mixer or something, is that your fault? Because all the money that we see floating around, probably most of it's touched dodgy hands. I remember seeing a few years ago, I don't know if it was true, but it sounded quite illogical based on working in the city for quite a while, but like some huge proportion of £50 notes in the UK had cocaine on them. So, it's not like small fish just walk around with cocaine and £50. So I don't know, man. Like fiat money's tainted. Like fiat's what we've used for many years or say we, not. I was gonna say we've used for kidnapping, but people have used for kidnapping and other nefarious things. So no matter what you use, if we just had goats, people would be using goats for kidnapping. They would be like,
and obviously,
I'll give you your son back if you give me 50 goats.
If they can't prove that the fiat system is clean, then how could we keep using that system? It's obviously like they want to clean Bitcoin, but they need to clean the fiat system first. As it says in the article, Brian Armstrong from Coinbase says that there are people in the UK who still think of crypto as some kind of gambling product and have completely missed the potential of crypto to update and improve the financial system for the benefit of everyone. And it does seem like they're in danger of falling behind, having completely forgotten this crypto. Starship says in the chat that Rachel from Accounts, running the treasury, is talking about selling the confiscated Bitcoin to cover some of the deficit, which would just be the best thing ever. Just like Germany making their big sell, the United Kingdom could make a sell, and everyone could calculate in the future what percentage of the deficit they could have paid if they'd held on to the Bitcoin. The same old
that Freudian slip there. What percentage of the deficit that they could fill, because we now have a mysterious £48 billion or whatever, I think it might even be £52 billion black hole, which is courtesy of Rachel from Accounts, because we only had a £22 billion one before. So in theory, she's managed to increase it by more than double in less than a year, and that's some feat.
Well, your country doesn't make anything, and they just left their major trade partnership, so it doesn't look good. No. But now we have to predict the future with the magic Bitcoin ball. Dan, Eve, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
Ever positive. I think we're going higher. Yeah, this is just a blip. A new all-time high as well.
I always agree. I'm always bullish. I always think it's going up. It's always hard to sell. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Don't count on it. Don't count on it. The ball is bearish. Moving on to issue 4. Harvard reports a $116 million stake in BlackRock iShares Bitcoin ETF in the latest filing. The position marks one of the largest known Bitcoin allocations by a U.S. university. It's also Harvard their largest stake in anything larger than their stakes in stocks or gold. Of course, I'm sure you all remember back in 2018 when a Harvard University economist said Bitcoin is more likely to hit $100 than $100,000. But it did hit $100,000. And now that it's over that price, Harvard is finally buying. I think this is the same story we talk about all the time about different institutions and how if only they had gotten in sooner, what they could have done. How many fine libraries Harvard could have built. What great Smithsonian institutions the United States could have built instead of giving all their money and profits to Tim Draper. It's really sad to see this keep happening. It's sad that we don't have, there's not like a small university like the University of Ohio or something where they listen to this show, or they listen to Andreas, or they listen to any of the other Bitcoin people who were screaming for years, buy the Bitcoin, take your large amount of money, buy the Bitcoin, especially as someone with no money at all who could buy hardly anything, buy the Bitcoin. Now we're finally seeing Harvard do it. It might be too late. It might be kind of a joke at this point, but at least they got the message. Dan, why do you think it took Harvard so long? 100 to 100,000, and now they're finally into it.
Yeah, they've definitely reversed on that, right? So they said it's going to be $100. Now they're saying now it's obviously 100,000, and they've bought in. It doesn't say when they bought in, but what they have done is they've got more of the Bitcoin ETF than they have a Google stock. I think, was it Google stock or the fact that was it Google stock? Yeah, I think it was. They got more. So they've surpassed recently the investment in Bitcoin than Alphabet, so that owns Google. So like you said, it's nice to see kind of the big brains buying in, but it would have been really cool to see like some tiny university that had bought Bitcoin, from years ago. I'm not sure what Overstock's position is, right? Because Overstock were one of the first kind of publicly traded companies that actually bought Bitcoin, and they kind of withered out of the news. Maybe they sold all theirs, but they were in such a huge position from the start. And whether Wikipedia like kept any of their Bitcoin, that would be interesting to find out. All these early companies that were public about it in some way, how that's evolved over time. But what we are seeing, obviously, is the complete role reversal. We've got Harvard now buying Bitcoin. Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan is now much more comfortable with Bitcoin. And even Peter Schiff is clearly stacking Bitcoin. He's definitely on the antagonistic side, but some of his tweets. But he's clearly stacking a bit of Bitcoin. I reckon. I think his daughter had bought into Bitcoin, and she's probably turned him around. So. Or his son, I can't remember which one. By the way, I think everyone's going to turn at one point, and they kind of have to, because you can't keep saying now that Bitcoin is going to die or it's worth nothing. And I think someone produced a chart of the Bitcoin obituaries, and they're almost gone now. There's almost no people saying Bitcoin is dead, it's gone for good. Everyone's jumping on the gravy train. It's just a case of how long they can last before they have to reverse what they've said over the last 16 years.
What were the companies you named, Dan? I think Overstock. They probably had to sell when they got rid of Patrick, whatever name was, the guy that was kind of the crazy CEO. He went to work for the Trump administration. I don't know if they're still holding, and they did the big move. They changed their name into Bed Bath & Beyond. It's pretty clever. What was the other company mentioned, Dan?
Well, Wikipedia, right? So because Wikipedia
that was the
all
best.
upset.
I was going to say they did a whole study, and they're like, well, if we include more donation options, like Bitcoin, for example, the more donation options we include, the less people donate. But they didn't take into account if their Bitcoin donations would go up like tenfold if they held them. So that's an interesting corollary to that study. They need to go back and check again what would have happened if they just kept accepting Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, there was some. I think in the UK, Overclockers was one site, like a PC building site that accepted Bitcoin for a while. So yeah, I had a few purchases from then where I'm like, oh, I should have just kept it instead of buying that Oculus Rift or that graphics card. But all part of the fun.
What's gotten worse and worse is the idea that if someone had shopped at the Silk Road almost 10 years ago, the change from that participation, if they just kept the $15 on the 300,
if they imagine if they just rounded up,
we've done really well. Yeah, it's amazing.
So some of the pre 2017 companies. So there's WordPress that started taking Bitcoin for premium services. Overstock, obviously. Tiger Direct accepted Bitcoin in 2014. Newegg in 2014. Dish Network satellite provider in 2014. Microsoft did. I remember
a lot of these things. It was in vogue in the day to brag about how you were converting it instantly at BitPay. The big thing they were worried about is companies that they were going to sell a hard drive for $100, and then the next week Bitcoin goes down. Now they only get $75. They still have to pay for the hard drive. They're on very thin margins, these companies. But no one was talking about this now pirate at 40 Bitcoin Ponzi scheme strategy, where I'll just hold the Bitcoin for you and you can trust me. We have one more video clip here. Last May, according to BitcoinNews.com, last May, students at Ohio State University audibly gasped and booed when the commencement speaker bought up Bitcoin. Is this real? I don't like this. This is really embarrassing. The price of Bitcoin was $68,000 at the time. It's just over $116,000 a year later. Let's listen just a little bit to this commencement speech.
I know this might feel boring, but I encourage you to keep an open mind right now.
No.
I see Bitcoin.
Legend. Oh my God, we're still so early, aren't we? That's incredible. Decentralized and finance.
Is this real? I don't like it. And they could have doubled their money in a year. All they had to do was listen to their commencement speaker. You might have think he knew a little something. They got him up there to speak. What do you think, Dan, about the commencement at Ohio State?
I think that one of the most damaging things to Bitcoin, from an uptake thing, was this labeling of Bitcoin bros. Like, it really did impact on when I was talking to people, and they would just automatically put you in, oh, as a Bitcoin bro, you know, which is obviously extremely sexist, but because you're a dude, it's totally fine. But yeah, I thought that was a bit weird. Like, and I still find that now, and you hear a lot of the boos there. They did seem like, you know, it was featured also in like a bunch of articles as like the biggest hobby turnoffs for men, like for women, and it's like number one is like, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons or something, and number two it's like Pokemon, number three is Bitcoin bros, and you know, it featured that negative side featured in a bunch of different articles, just spayed all over the place. And they were just regurgitated, and Bitcoin bro became like this term that you weren't just like someone who's interested in money and economics and finance and learning about that side. You were just some money chaser, almost like a penny stock kind of trader, which is actually more of the shit coins, really, to be honest. Penny stock trading is way more synonymous with shitcoin trading. But I think that had quite a bad impact and so people got labeled Bitcoin bros, and they would automatically shut down as soon as they heard you talking because you're a Bitcoin bro, rather than, oh, what's this intriguing new hard money that you're talking about?
It seems like there was an existing class of programming bros, right? Where they didn't care about the computers, they only cared about the money. And they do all these stories. They're like, they're programming code and they're running on treadmills at the same time. They're the programming bros. And they're like, oh, dude, look at this sweet exception I wrote and all this kind of thing. And I think you're right, Dan, something along the lines there, that got mixed in with Wolf of Wall Street, where they're up there like pounding their chests and they're selling the penny stocks to the dummies. And they're like, yeah, you take the penny stock, you dummy, you know, and they take all the profit. And that got tied up in the Bitcoin. But I still think we're at kind of these core principles where they still look at the Bitcoin. And it's funny because I had the same feeling forever ago when it was over $1, when it was over 30 and over 100. I was like, the money's already been made. Like, the really smart people bought it at $1. They sold it at 30. I'm not them. I'm dumb. And now for them, they're saying, oh, the smart people bought it at 30K and they sold it 100 or whatever. They're on a different schedule of monies. And sure, it's harder for us to believe that, having seen it gone from 100 to 100K and all of that. But it's still the same story where you say, someone else already made the money. And so you hate that other person because they made the money, and you kind of hate yourself because you didn't get in and make that smart money, because they probably heard about it like I did. Everybody had that moment. They heard about it. They didn't buy it. They thought, and that goes to my number two, the idea that they still think Bitcoin is too complicated. Bitcoin, whenever they tell the joke on TV, it's great. We're in all the jokes now. We're always there. But it's always like, Bitcoin is a 1,000-piece Lego set or a puzzle. Bitcoin is a thing that I don't understand. So because I don't understand it, there's no way I could invest in it. So the reason that I didn't make money on number two is because I didn't understand it. So
and what's incredible about that is
everybody else doesn't understand it. I can never be those people. I'm not a programming Bitcoin Wall Street bro. So they just group themselves out of it, and they miss opportunity after opportunity. And it's that joke we always refer to. And I know you guys have heard me tell it a dozen times, but the guy's on the boat, and, you know, he's on the top of the roof, and it's a flood, and they send a boat for him. He's like, no, I can't get on the boat. I'm waiting for God to save me. And they send a helicopter with a ladder. And they're like, come on, just climb up the ladder. He's like, I can't get on that ladder. I'm waiting for God to save me. And he drowns, and he gets to heaven. And he's like, hey, God, you know, where were you? Why didn't you save me? He's like, who do you think sent the boat? Who sent the helicopter? You know, and the same thing with Bitcoin. It's like, we're just begging these people, like, get a little bit of Bitcoin. You know, oh, it's $300, it's $800, it's $10,000. We're like, you could still buy $100 worth, but they just won't do it. They just won't climb up. And now it's at the point where all of the corporations and the banks and the big money are climbing right up. And I'll bet you guys in the audience are seeing it as well. You know, you probably put all your, you know, money in, but you can't get the relatives to get $300 in there. They can't figure out a payment plan. You're like, just put 100 a week or whatever. You make lots of money. They can't figure it out. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, the fact that the existing fiat system is just nuts, and I when I was learning it kind of getting into the treasury sort of team of an old workplace, and I was learning about the, you know, international clearing houses and how slow money moves, and how we've got this such an antiquated system where you have to wait for overnight runs and stuff like that in order for finances to clear, and it, you know, it would take, they've shortened it now, but it used to take days for certain things, and you're like, it just makes so much more sense. Like, once you learn it, you know that, oh, it's okay, it's a blockchain, so it's a bunch of blocks in sequence, and they're just a list of the transactions going back and forth, you know, and that's all it is. That's the technology behind it. And it's transparent so that anyone can see where one address is sent to another. And you may not know who's behind that address, but you know that that address has got that money, or that address sent that money and received that money. And it's really not that hard to comprehend. But if you were to like take someone to like some of the treasury like talks that I went to, I was like, this is so dumb, because I was learning about them at the same time. In fact, I just kind of learned about Bitcoin. Then I was like, oh, okay, so this is how Swift works. Yeah, that's really dumb. And this is how, you know, international settlements work. That's really dumb. It's such a slow and an archaic system, and yet people would still laugh and go, "Oh, but Bitcoin's got 10-minute block times." And you're like, yeah, but that's nothing compared to what we already have. And so people are so heavily invested in that, but they don't know how it works, right? They've used fiat, they've used dollars, they've used pounds, they've converted it to euros and stuff like that wherever they go. And what's also weird is that people usually are so pissed off when they go abroad and they're like, oh, I just converted my dollars to euros and it cost me a fortune, or I converted my X to Y and it cost me a fortune. But then if you say, oh, there's only like a, you know, you can buy Bitcoin with a 0.5% spread, even less than that, they're like, a 0.5% spread, rabble. And it's just so hard to get past that block, but so stupid that we're so early. And oh, there's another article I thought of, and it was the one where it was like the two guys wearing Bitcoin jumpers, and it was like, we're getting rich and you're not, or something. And that was like, what, late 2017. So a bunch of these articles were made by a bunch of jealous people who, and we've all been there, because we all know that we could have bought more, or when we first heard about it, and when we were preaching it to everyone else, and then we could have not sold it when we needed it for other stuff and found some other ways around it. And so we've all been there. But most of these articles, you've got to realize, are driven and written by jealous people who lost out, jealous people that could have earned a bit of money, and they're like, oh, you know, so and so down the road, you know, made a few blah 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 blah. I'm going to write a miserable article about them. And yeah, that's just what's sad about the whole thing, because Bitcoin, people into Bitcoin, it's not just bros, it's all sorts of incredible, amazing people. Loads of women are into Bitcoin too, and very much the hard economics, not the shilling and the stuff like that. Obviously, you see some big personalities on Twitter that kind of sell with a nice Instagram type picture, trying to shill a shitcoin, but it's not all about that. It's all about that. It's about the hard money, and so on.
Well, and like you said, Dan, every one of these articles is a potential entry point. It's a point where you can get back in, even if you've lost your stack or you've been hacked, or like we're going to talk about later and other things happen, still an entry point. And like you're saying, I remember I was working at BTC Jam at a Bitcoin startup and we were doing Bitcoin loans, and we had a pretty good staff, 10 to 15 people. And I would say about 5 of them believed in Bitcoin. The other 10, even though they're being employed by a Bitcoin company and they have lots of, me and other guys, telling them over and over again how great this thing is, blah, blah, blah. And it was $100 to $300. They could have got some easy. I don't think they bought any at all. And it is funny, Dan, like you say, what happens when you learn about the monetary system, when you learn about the Federal Reserve. Sometimes I don't even think they do it in high school anymore. I had to go to a special college course. And when I learned about how it borrowed money and how it loaned out money, and then they took that money and loaned out 10 times that money, and how they multiplied the money through the marketplace, and no one really has the money that they're loaning to you when you buy a house. They just write it down as a debt. They don't actually put money there. You go a little mad. You go a little crazy. And I think it's easy to go from the Federal Reserve, reading about that, to going to any conspiracy theory you want. Because once that's true, what else could be true? And again, to go through just the basics of the smallest system, this is your credit card, and this is your secret number. And don't give it to anyone, except you give it to everyone when you pay. And not only are they going to get your secret number, they get your address so they can come get you. So every time you pay, you're leaving your address and your secret number and your other little secret number and your little expiration date secret number. You're leaving all of those behind in plain text, in plain view. Anyone working at the fancy furniture store or the grocery store, wherever you use your secret number, could steal your funds. And that system was cool in the 50s. I mean, I guess people couldn't remember as many numbers, and they had that cha-chunk machine, and they would make a physical paper copy of it. Again, you could take the paper copy and steal the person's number off the paper copy. But that was the best system they had. And to still see it today. And like you're saying, Dan, one more thing. It says that at an ATM near me recently, instead of charging like $5 or $10, they charged 2%. So the more money you took from the ATM, the more money that the company would take from you. And now I don't care, because I've got a cool card from Schwab that cancels all your ATM fees. I suggest you guys get a card like that. But otherwise, yeah, 2%. So similar to buying stuff on Coinbase, where I think originally it was like $5, $10 fee no matter what you buy. And then they're like, no, we need to be like the big boys. We need to charge 1%, because obviously you make tons more money that way.
Yep. It's a crazy, sad state of affairs, though, that people still see. That was only a year ago that they boo Bitcoin, and people would have been more receptive like 5 years prior to that. I think that a lot of the negativity has actually come recently from the ship has sailed collective. They're just like, I didn't buy it and people told me about it, so I'm just going to make fun of it. But you'd expect more from students, right? Because students are the ones that want to learn and want to know more about the world. They want to study, and they should be yearning for more information, not just poo-pooing something because they've read an article on the Bitcoin bros.
Well, and double up is pretty good. Their money could have doubled from 60 to 120. It still looks quite possible. We'll go from 120 to 250 in this cycle. Still pretty good. But I guess people want 10Xs. They want larger monies. We've got some bonus stories here. Just going to cover really quickly. Is this the end of the Newport tip Bitcoin saga? For the rest of you not in the UK, that means garbage dump. This is the man, James Howells. It's been 12 years involving a high court and a court of appeal hearing. But it looks like James Howells, who threw away his hard drive with 8,000 Bitcoin on it, he tried to launch his own currency, for some reason called CNOG coin, to regain some of his money. It looks like they tried to buy the landfill, but instead are getting sued by the city now because their deal to buy the landfill wasn't a good enough deal or something like that. It's hard to understand, but it looks like he's managed to generate debt and not get the landfill. It seems like he will not be able to get the landfill. So it's over. It's over for Newport. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the man himself, his challenges? And do you think this is really the end? Because as I started to say it was the end, in the back of my head, I was like, oh, there'll be some kind of foreign company, some kind of Chinese, Japanese conglomerate that comes in with more money than you can imagine, and they'll buy up this garbage dump. And maybe this James Howell guy, maybe they got to get him because he could claim there's a password on there or something. They're going to need him, keep him alive. What do you think, Dan? Is this the end of the garbage dump?
Yeah, ultimately there may be something crazy that happens in the future that's government sanctioned, but ultimately him being able to essentially root through a bunch of other people's hard drives that would have been thrown away is a massive invasion of privacy. It's the equivalent of saying the government saying it's totally cool for someone to go and root through someone else's bins to find out, I just think that that's a huge invasion of privacy. So maybe in the future, the government's like, oh crap, we've got a chance now as the government to take control of this, or the council or whatever, and try and find this 8,000 Bitcoins. And we're allowed to because of X, Y, and Z, because people gave their rubbish over to us. But to give it to a citizen, I think it's just nuts. And I'd be pissed off if I lived in that area and he was trying to get into the rubbish, because what else would, he's ultimately, his business or whatever would ultimately be in control of whatever's found and would have to read the information. And what other private information is there? There's going to be dick pics and stuff on people's hard drives, and maybe other types of pics and all sorts which would be good to find and incriminate these people. But certainly general privacy stuff, people weren't really hot on encryption. People never changed passwords, and I worked at companies that were, I can't say exactly what they were, but they were like MOD certified and had literally password 123 as their admin passwords for like everything, the God passwords. And so that was it wasn't until like the mid sort of 2010s that people really started to become focused on changing their passwords. And you got the Google prompt saying that your passwords have been compromised, and have I been pawned, and all that. Pwnd or PWN, however you pronounce that. So yeah, I just think it's a big invasion of privacy. It's not going to happen. Maybe the council turns around one day and says, yeah, we're taking your data, but other than that, it's a massive encroachment of other people's data. But unlucky, mate, is what
I think it's pwned, like owned. But yes, it's
Oh.
over for him. I agree with Starship in the chat. He should have rebought as soon as it was lost. That's the lesson here. If you lose a large amount, even if he could have, say, bought half of this or a fourth of this right away, and maybe just, gotten rid of his house or whatever his possessions were, that would have been better off than this quixotic attempt. Like Dan said, I think it's a huge privacy violation. If you threw your hard drive in the garbage, you don't have the expectation that this guy is going to go through every hard drive in the dump looking for his hard drive. I do think it's enough Bitcoin where maybe the government or a rich company would have to go in and get this. So I don't think it's over. I'm never going to say it's over, but it looks like that this guy has exhausted his options. He's made a coin. He's begged the council. I said he should have run for council. Maybe it's really hard there or something, but I think he's out of legal options, and we're done with him losing his hard drive full of 8,000 Bitcoin. However, we're not done with an Estonian banker whose lost Ethereum wallet now holds $1 billion in Ethereum. It says 2 years after Rain Lofmus admitted he lost access to a pre-sale wallet, the stash is worth over $1 billion, at least on paper. This is especially painful to me during the Ethereum pre-sale when we discussed it live here on the air. My friends were all dumping on it, and I had that little voice in the back of my head say, oh, maybe you should get some of that pre-sale. Maybe you should give it a try. You don't know everything, blah, blah, blah. But of course, like we all do, I ignored the little voice, got none of the Ethereum pre-sale. But apparently this guy did, and he would be sitting on $1 billion. Dan, it's the same thing. I mean, it was a paper wallet. All right, maybe it was paper. I don't know what it was, or hypnosis. Maybe they could get this key back. They could go through his old hard drives. Obviously, $1 billion is an incredible amount, truly ridiculous. Dan, what do you think about this guy who lost $1 billion in Ethereum?
Oh, it's another savage loss, and there's so many of them. There's the other, isn't there a guy that had a a Bitcoin wallet, like a Trezor, and he's got like 2 password attempts left before it's gone forever.
Well, and that one they say they got fixed. That one's
Oh,
crazy,
yeah, wow.
where a third party company claims that they have figured out a way to isolate the key or store it in memory, some kind of special thing.
Yeah.
But the guy who has the key, who they need him to bring in the Trezor, he has a deal with another company. And at the time we covered it last time, that other company had not figured out how to do it. So because of his licensing deal or whatever it was, some kind of legal agreement, he could give the other guys the key. So that one does look like they're gonna get access to, hopefully eventually. But with this, it looks like the password was lost. He'll consider credible help to get it. So yes, but same. You're right, Dan. So many people have done this on smaller occasions. I know you can go back and look at we did a costume contest for Comic-Con, and I made all the paper wallets honestly. That is, I did not keep the extra keys. And there's at least one of those where the guy won now $5,000, and it's trapped forever in the Bitcoin unless they kept that paper wallet that I wrote on, like, do not throw away. This is money. You try to tell them. But I'm sure a lot of people have that. They're saying in the chat, someone lost half a Bitcoin at Cryptsy. Oh, 50,000.
Yeah,
That's bad. I've seen the same thing. I remember at Mt. Gox, you get on there and you think you're so smart, you're going to trade your way to victory. And, you're like, oh, you have one, and then you have a half, and then you have a quarter. And then you're like, oh, I traded my way not to victory. And to think about that now as how much it's worth would be very sad. So I'm not going to do that. Like Ben said about DJ Booth's website, xsats.next, it's the saddest website in the world. Because you can go back and say, how much was 500 sats on this day? And you can feel sad for all your purchases.
Good point, though. As soon as you realize you've lost it, just buy it back if you're that confident. Yeah, that's a really good point.
It does seem it's one of those decision points where it would teach you to be like, well, was I really serious about that Bitcoin? And it turns out, yes, you were serious. Yes, you did a bad job securing it. You didn't get a Trezor or multiple Trezors or whatever the correct solution would have been. But like you say, like they're saying, yeah, just rebuy, get back in there. Our next story is pretty fun. It's getting hot in here, but we're going to keep going. Scottie Pippen, famous basketball player for the Chicago Bulls, said that Michael Saylor warned him about Satoshi chatter. After meeting Michael Saylor, the basketball legend later found himself dining on Saylor's boat and geeking about Bitcoin. They kind of hide the lead here in the article. According to the article in Cointelegraph magazine, not our sources, this is about Mr. Pippen, Scottie Pippen has been dreaming and having conversations with Satoshi and then publishing the results of those conversations. We talked previously on the show about Scottie Pippen predicting very high prices for Bitcoin and Ethereum, but now he is having dreams of Satoshi. Dan, Eve, almost anyone else, we wouldn't talk about this, but this is a member of the multi-time champion Chicago Bulls, played with Michael Jordan, maybe as good as Jordan, an incredible player, but now seems like a little nutty, and Michael Saylor had to tell him to chill out, but it looks like he's still publishing this on X. What do you think? Is Scottie Pippen talking to Satoshi in his dreams?
Oh, probably as much as I'm talking to Jesus and Elvis. I mean, obviously, dreams are they're they're self-propelled, right? They're just basically kind of, I don't know, like certainly mine are really weird, like microcosms of my general life and stuff. And sometimes people will pop up in them that you've been thinking about, on that day. And sometimes you'll think of someone that you've literally not seen for like 20 years. And you're like, how the hell did I think of that person? Or at least know it's that person, because my dreams are, I don't even see the face, but I just kind of know it's them. I know by the idiolect and the way they talk, the way they move and stuff. It's really weird. But yeah, I think the Sailor's kind of right to be like, keep the craziness out of. I mean, Pippen's, he's good because he's getting people in that were NBA fans, and he's spreading the word. But at the same time, it's like, keep it. Let's keep the crazy dreams on the D-Lo. Let's talk about the core principles of Bitcoin and do some, good old hardcore shilling of Bitcoin, but maybe not talk about dreams of Satoshi, because I think we're all agreed that we'd rather not know who Satoshi was ultimately, or at least know that if Satoshi's not around anymore. So so that million Bitcoin that was mined initially is going nowhere. It's lost into the ether. And we are just saying in the chat, like people saying they've lost it on Cryptsy, they've lost it on poker sites back in the day. There was faucets. I used to use faucets like when I first heard about Bitcoin. I'd be mining with twin GTX 680s, and then I'd be using faucets as well to try and get Bitcoin. And it was just so much of it was spread around that just got lost, and so many wallets that people have. And these were, you're not talking small amounts, you're talking, large amounts of Bitcoin that just got lost that you'll never, ever get back again. And that are not in circulation. So, let's just keep Satoshi a mystery, just like we keep the amount of sats that are out of circulation a mystery. Because that's one thing that's kind of weird and cool, is that we'll never know how many sats really accurately are out of like circulation, because we're still seeing now wallets that suddenly come to life that haven't been touched since 2011. And even prior to that. So that's really cool to know that those larger wallets that people held that amount of time, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. So how many of those original wallets are completely out of circulation?
Well, I think it would be more impressive here if Satoshi had invented a dream advertising technology or whatever that he's using or she is using to communicate with Mr. Pippen here. That would be a great technology. You could advertise in everybody's brain. I've seen movies about that. That would be good stuff. I think the main thing we can gather from this is that Scottie Pippen is overinvested in Bitcoin. If you thought that you were stressed about the amount of Bitcoin or what have you that you may be holding, you have nothing compared to Scottie Pippen. The man is dreaming about Bitcoin. He's dreaming that the creator is coming to him. And fortunately for him, for his positive attitude or what have you, the creator is coming to him with good news about your Bitcoin, Scottie Pippen. It's good that he's not talking to an angry Satoshi or a pessimistic Satoshi or a Vitalik or somebody like that. Everything is fine from Scottie Pippen, Satoshi. You're going to be just great. But yeah, I feel for everybody in the chat. They've lost lots of Bitcoin. The same thing here. Small something that you left behind in some website, pretty soon a 0.0 becomes a 0.1, and 0.1 becomes a big deal. And now you're wishing you had it back. But I think that's all part of the way here and part of what it took for it to get here. And everyone likes to gloss over the part where we spent it and not think that we're going to not spend it in the future because it's going to be a currency and it's going to be spent. But yeah, the Michael Saylors and stuff are not looking at where it came from and how it got here. I think best of luck to Scottie Pippen. I don't think we know too much more about this. Obviously, a basketball great. He had some good advice on the investing, I thought, for some of the Bitcoin and the Ethereums, but I don't know anything about if he's communicating with Satoshi in his dreams. If he was here, I would be curious to ask Scottie Pippen about this. It would be a fun conversation. We have one more brief story just on the end here. According to Reuters, leader for life. El Salvador's Bukele is headed that way, critics say. They have amended the constitution of El Salvador to allow indefinite president runs. Bukele's popular after the gang crackdown, although always, as we covered, it looks like American money went to the gangs, so it might have been a gang payout. And the opponents say democracy is dying. As we've speculated on this show many times, if he's in power forever, at least he doesn't have to steal the money, and we don't find out how many Bitcoin fit in a briefcase or even smaller hole as they sneak out of the country. Dan, Eve, this has been a disappointing deal, I think, for everybody that backed Bukele, everyone that backed all the Satoshi things. We've said from the beginning, we can't decide who uses Bitcoin, so it's great that they're using it, whatever, but that doesn't mean we have to just go around supporting unelected dictators who seem like they might be infinite presidents, as I mistaked, and they're joking about it in the chat. Dan, what do you think about the infinite presidency?
I'm torn on this one because because obviously he seems like he's kind of brought El Salvador's crime rate down, and democracies are all good and everything, but democracies can be manipulated very much, and there can be cheating in democracies, and but ultimately democracies are good, but he's kind of I think I'm on his side very much because he's really shown it to the BIS and the IMF, right? They were just absolutely laughing at El Salvador and their gamble on Bitcoin, and I kind of like the underdogs in a situation. I always back the underdogs, and the fact that at least last time I saw it, there were something like $750 million now their Bitcoin is worth, and they were absolutely ridiculed. They were by multiple countries and the BIS and the IMF, and now that they're doing so good, I just I think they're kind of making some good decisions. I wouldn't call him a dictator. I just think he's kind of there may have been what people say is a coup, but kind of one man's coup is another man's pleasure and treasure, or whatever the saying is. But he does seem to have got like bad crime down, and so as someone that was mugged violently in London, and it only seems to have kind of got worse over the years. I kind of would like to have seen my mugger behind bars instead of the police basically doing absolutely fucking nothing to find them and giving up after a week. Sorry about the F-bomb. But yeah, so I'm kind of tough on crime because I stay on I don't park on double yellow lines and all that. Like I'm hardcore. So I would like to see, and I'm not being funny, but like in the UK, I think the government recently released a bunch of people, and 75% of them have reoffended since. So I just think that certain things you just need to be a bit tougher and a bit less cushion and lovey-dovey with.
I think one of the takeaways here is how hard it is to do Bitcoin retail adoption. He started out with the Chivo wallet. He had the position of government. He could speak, they had the big speeches, the big parties. They could presumably put up signs everywhere, put a mailer in everybody's mailbox, get the Chivo wallet. They were going to give him, I don't know, $20 in free Chivo, whatever it was, some kind of thing. And I think that they really failed there too. I don't think that there's major retail adoption in El Salvador. Despite this, I don't think we have major real adoption here in the United States, despite everybody's speeches, everybody going to conferences, all the money that all these companies raise. Bitcoin retail adoption is not there. I don't know what it's going to take. I think it's going to be one of those unfortunate things where after the cow is gone, they close the barn door. And all of a sudden, as soon as there's no money at all to make in Bitcoin, and we're looking at $1 million a coin or $20 million a coin, and everybody's saying, yeah, there's no way in my life I could ever get a whole Bitcoin, even if I borrowed and I sold and didn't drink Starbucks for 6 years or whatever Michael Saylor wants you to do. You're never going to get it. I think at that point, all the retail comes rushing in. And everybody just flips and they're like, oh, we love Bitcoin. And oh, we accept that at my business. No, do you have any Satoshis? I would like to get some Satoshis. And everybody jumps on as soon as there's absolutely nothing they can gain. And when they get all the ETFs get all the money and all the bankers get all the money, all these startup people get all the money and everything's gone. I think that's when retail's coming in. It's not going to be because of a program or because of a country or a company or somebody paid you $20 to try this new way to pay or whatever it is. It's going to be this last ditch when it doesn't matter. And there's nothing you can do for these people. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I feel, again, with all the family and all the friends, and I'm sure you guys feel it too, you especially hurts when you have like the well-off friend or family where you're like, oh, if only they had put 10, 20% of their incredible wealth into my ridiculous, stupid idea that, it's hard because you can't, just going backwards, you're like, when it was 100, we didn't know it would be 100K. Like we all thought it would be, like we all wanted it to be. And 10 years is a really long time to say, it's easy, invest for 10 years, it'll go to 100K. But now I think they all look back at that and they're kind of pissed at us. They're like, why didn't you tell us enough? Why didn't you tell us in a way that we would understand. Why didn't you like push my hand into the ATM and like mash my code out until the money came in and went into the Coinbase account? Like, yeah, and I've done that with people. I've done where I've like held their hand and made them buy the $100 on Coinbase. And in my head, I'm like, they're going to get it. Like they're going to buy $100 next month and they're going to buy $100. No, they never follow through. They have the 100, they lose it. They call me for the key. Do you have the key? I never have anybody's keys. I never keep anybody's keys because I don't want them, and it shouldn't be my job anyway. But and that's kind of the whole point of the technology. But Dan, what do you think? I'm gonna read a little bit of the chat, but I'm hoping that everybody had the same feeling that I did, where like you told everybody, and you still can't get them to buy the dang thing.
Yeah, it's you made a good point about the people that I knew a lot of people that had a lot of disposable cash working in the city, and they none of them would even humor me by saying like, oh, you know, I bought like £100 of Bitcoin. Because like even within instantly, I started telling people, I was like, you can print this stuff with graphics cards. This is amazing. You can basically print your own money at the moment, obviously, because the rewards were so high back then. And I was like, you know, even if you don't want to kind of invest in graphics cards and spend all the time fiddling with them and CG Miner and all that, you can literally just buy a little bit. And for someone who was on silly money, like £1,000 or even £100 was so little back then. But even buying £100 when it was £200 would have given you 0.5 Bitcoin, which if they'd have held it would have been $60,000 or $58,000 or whatever it is now. And it was such a small amount back then if you had silly money to just be like putting small amounts in. And so I'm really surprised that actually what we haven't seen is a massive flux of celebrities or generally rich people going, of course I bought a couple of £1,000, like, you know, or a couple of $1,000 in 2012. Of course I did. It was a couple of $1,000. I was worth 20 million, 50 million at the time. It was silly money. It was literally like what I'd go out and spend on a meal back then. We haven't had a massive amount of people doing that, whether that's because they're trying to stay private or whether people just really weren't convinced that back then. And you only had the likes of people like Tim Draper that were crazy enough to spend like $40 million on the Silk Road auction. But yeah, I'm surprised that more kind of celebrities and public figures didn't turn around and go, yeah, of course I did. Of course I bought a couple of $1,000.
Well, and even the big winners, I forget his name, but the American football player who put, I want to like 20% of his salary. He's like, I'm going to put 20% into Bitcoin. And obviously he won huge. Like everyone can do the math. He did great. If he held the Bitcoin, obviously has no reason to sell. You know, like we've always said, people that have, you know, good jobs like football players or finance guys, they don't have to worry about rent, right? They keep going. They're not like you where you have to sell for rent. I'd like to see him put the other 80% in. Just say, yeah, I bought the 20, but I should have put the rest in, and I'm doing it now. I'm doing this now. I guess maybe nobody wants to talk about their investments. We were going to talk a little bit about Peter McCormick and Bedford, and he bought the football team there, the soccer team, and I think that the town thinks that he has a lot of money. I don't know his personal finances, but it sounds like, according to the article that we read, they're calling him Batman, and he's saying that he's going to take on private security and that his private security will be better than the police, and you could just pay him for security. But I wouldn't want to be in any of those positions to where the town that you live in thinks that you have as much money as Batman. That seems horribly dangerous and disastrous, not to mention, not even to go down the line of private police, private firefighters, those kind of things. But Dan, what do you think about the idea of Batman, crypto Batman, Bitcoin Batman, what do you want to say, saving the town of Bedford? You might have even been there. I don't know.
Well, I've not been there, but it seems like a sad state of affairs where people have to look at getting private, and we've seen this in a few rather random places in either the UK or elsewhere, where they've said, right, well, the police are becoming very soft on crime, and therefore we're going to kind of do our own patrols because we don't, people don't feel safe around there. So it's just a general sad state of affairs. that it's kind of got that way. But yeah, the difference I suppose between, I was talking to someone about this the other day, but the difference I suppose between, say, knowing, I think I picked like Elton John. Like Elton John's worth probably like hundreds of millions of pounds, right? But the difference between him and say someone who has Bitcoin is a wrench, as Jason Locke always talks about. James Locke always talks about the difference is the wrench attack. They know that Elton John's got all this money or whatever, but he's not. You know, his money's probably in banks, which is hard enough to get to when you just need to spend £1,000 of it to pay a bloody bill, let alone to withdraw all of it at once. Whereas with a wrench, you can help someone withdraw everything from Bitcoin in one go. So that's why I think that there's a bit more of a focus on security and people are a lot more paranoid because of that wrench attack. And as much as this pains probably a few people to kind of say it like this, but there's for non-Bitcoiners who didn't like grow up with the idea of holding your keys and holding your coins, it's actually a really scary thought to get someone into Bitcoin and to teach them that they are totally in control of all their money and they can't phone up someone and complain if they screw it up, if they lose their private key, if they drop their ledger and they haven't written down the seed properly. You know, it's a hard thing for people hurdle for people to get over because they're now in control of their destiny. But the other factor with that is that someone else can come and put a gun to your head. And we've seen all these stories with the Ledger CEO in France that got beaten up on the street, and then there's someone that lost a finger, and then there's these people that gloat on streams on like Twitch or whatever that they had a bunch of Bitcoin and they got mugged. And I think that's the big difference, right? Is that normal celebrities, they've got loads of money, and there's billionaires that have loads of money, but they aren't wrench attackable, as it were. And I think that's what freaks people out about holding their own keys, is it? So in a way, in a terrible way, having your keys on a very much risky centralized exchange provides people with a safety blanket.
Well, that's sometimes safe and sometimes not. I know people that have had their money on Coinbase and like father and like son, both of them robbed, both of them completely cleaned out. The thing these days, I would just watch out for anybody. Don't join any Zoom chats. A lot of Zoom chats, they send you a pop-up window. You click the wrong button. Pretty soon they're controlling your computer. Turn off your computer immediately. Otherwise, they're going to steal all your stuff. And yeah, it's very dangerous what people have online, what they have access to in Bitcoin. But going back to why we couldn't get people to buy, why my best efforts, probably your best efforts failed. I don't know what's wrong with people. I thought that in your 20s and maybe your 30s that you should be looking for these kind of investment opportunities where you say, wow, that could be a home run or it could be nothing. And I could put a G or 10 Gs in. Maybe it'll be really good. Maybe it'll be nothing. I remember I was looking for Facebook stock, Apple stock. These are not very adventurous investments, but you know, still you're trying to get up, right? You're trying to put something in that investment portfolio. You can't just have IBM or whatever, Microsoft. But something's wrong. People are too depressed. They think everything's a scam, even when their friends like me tell them over and over again. And it goes from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000. And you're like, come on, guys, get in. But maybe they think all money's a scam. Starship said in the chat that all money's a scam. And yeah, I just don't know why we couldn't get these people in. And even with the El Salvador and the MicroStrategy story, I remember when they were underwater. And I remember, like Dan was saying, everyone was making fun of them. And I thought the same thing with my little portfolio, I thought with theirs. I was like, if they could just hold through this mess, there's a possibility somebody writes a completely different story about El Salvador at the end of this, that this Michael Saylor, if he can get his board of directors to not sell his incredible investment, he could be a hero on the other side. And now we're on that other side, and it was only a year. It was only a year and a half. It wasn't hardly any time at all. So shout out to everybody in the chat who has given us the comments. We're going to check those out and give us a thumbs up. I think we're running out of time for today's show. Dan, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
I'm just going to go for a prediction, which is that we will reach another all-time high. I think this news is just a minor blip, and all the big stuff is still happening. All the 401k. I don't know if that's live yet, that they can use their 401ks, but I think that's going to open up a massive amount of private wealth to be able to invest into Bitcoin, even if it is via ETFs. So this is just a minor blip. We already kind of knew that it was always, I think, priced in that America wasn't going to be buying Bitcoin. They were just going to be using the confiscated ones. I think we've talked about that a while back. It was kind of hinted at. So yeah, minor blip, and then on our way to another all-time high.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. People always think it's about the news, that the news affects the chart. I think a lot of ways the trader guys might be right, that the chart is just pre-written. And after it goes up 15%, it has to go down 3 to 5% in order for it to go up another 15%. It can't go straight up. Something about our mind, we say Bitcoin is the greatest investment ever. Facebook stock, Apple stock, whatever you believe in is the greatest investment ever. How could it ever go down? But if you look at any of these charts, they wiggle up and down. They don't go straight up unless you zoom out a lot. So it's looking good. Doing the show back in America this week. It's great to be home, but I'm in a totally different time zone, and I don't know what time it is. But it's hot here in Las Vegas, and it's nice to be back. I had a great time over in Europe on Mad Tour number 9. If you guys caught that on Twitter, of course, the price of Bitcoin went up, as it does on every single Mad Tour, up and to the right. So thanks to everybody for joining us. Be sure to give us a thumbs up. Put in a comment, and we'll check out the chat later. Until next time.